nangbe chulu la da ko go ya bu yona tani tentang kera chesho chembo chikde leji chakcha sekende deni pomo jorwala tani dambi chu drup to patan sanji ki gopon top to gi nyamla yores ko sonko deni de sanji chomden de gi sombe sanga dorji te pe yang dapa la dewa yona mena kan meso kandra yores
yares
no so
ta saji nanji nanjalame ji tene nanjalame ji nuna haji maji nime ji nune tene maji to nime ji niga zondo bate tene zondo baji laji saje desu saje jega nune zo chechi jire saje jande de kari reba yuwa desu ina tene nyasa la kete tozu kala kaba desu
Yes, there is a connection. Rinpoche said, you'll remember I spoke previously of 4 major classes of Tantra. The Kriya Tantra, Charya Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, or the 4th being the Tantra of Unsurpassable Union. And furthermore, I mentioned that this 4th category of the Tantra of Unsurpassable Union was divided into Father Tantra, Mother Tantra, and Non-Dual Tantra. Principally in the classes of Mother and Non-Dual Tantra, there are certain techniques involving sexual union as a basis for spiritual practice, which are technically termed karma mudra. That is the Buddhist technical term for these, a collective term for these practices. They are known as karma mudra. And in fact, they are part of a greater cycle of teachings known as teachings on the 4 mudras. These are 4 different approaches to various aspects of our experience that can be transformed. So Rinpoche says, the teachings do exist as they were taught by the Buddha. They do constitute an authentic part of the tradition. The only difficulty is getting people to practice them purely.
On to check out the plan, this I can not on conquerors, out of the hot, but I saw there's a kind of conquerors, then you don't things and number things, so I chip up on top of us, things and hospital, you put them a sort of enjoy the particulars, and get yellow, then tumo conquerors. Tumo lalum, tumo maala sato, tila zabala sato, te laza nila ronga tane, lisi la dewa sheli pati kone, tene, sisu dea jibi tila te, rubala patapa, rubala gawa, rubala nyakala patapa, nyakala choka, nyakala dewa la patapa, cheparja gawa, There is honest pane, Haji Gawa, National Kala, that no mamma to be on the Shajachiman, number Yata by the countries. Then it remains at the high, the general right there, then Sonene, Deva, Nika, Yakana, Dramana City, a young rank, take it in a zoom, dry, send the so conduce. Me parts are zoom to pa, shallow my show, zooms and a young rent to pa. Then Lila Tronsona, and Zatu Tani Liliaris, that Haji, kill it the Chassara, then that on the moment to put shepherds in after Shaja Chimudu, Tagiaris, that's it at Tomo, me palace on it, can you remember me, Malata and the tradition? Tene, mine tata laji sajak tenda bate dutu yaris.
She says, since you asked, if you're interested in how these practices would traditionally be approached, first an individual would be required to go through a fairly long period of purification to purify their body, speech, and mind of the effects of harmful actions and to purify obscurations in the mind, as well as to augment various positive qualities such as merit and awareness. A system of teachings and practices known as mudra, or preliminary practices. Following that, the person would have to receive an authentic empowerment into one of these major tantric cycles from a qualified teacher, and then receive fairly extensive teaching in first the deity meditation connected with that cycle. And then the person would cultivate the experience of their own physical body as the form of the deity, experiencing that as the union of form and emptiness. And this isn't something you merely intellectualize. You actually directly experience your physical body as the body of the deity, as the union of form and emptiness, with no self-nature of its own. You learn to experience through this practice your speech as the union of sound and emptiness, and this is accomplished in part by the recitation of mantras, often hundreds of thousands or even millions of mantras over, again, a long period of time. As well, you begin to acclimatize yourself to an experience of your ordinary mind as the union of intelligent awareness and emptiness. And you gain control over various states of samadhi, or meditative absorption, both mundane in their application, such as the energies of pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and wrathful or exorcising energy, and also a more sublime experience of the true nature of mind, and this must be developed and purified until it becomes very stable. Following that, the person would practice what is known as tumo, or the inner heat. And there are various stages to this practice, again, all of which take intense practice over a period of time. There is the initial stage of practice, which is known as ignition or blazing of the heat, the initial stirring or generation of the inner warmth at the level of the navel. And as this warmth begins to pervade the body, there is an energy concentrated in the crown of the head which begins to flow downwards. And through the use of this technique of tumo, a person becomes extremely proficient in controlling the flow of energy between these two poles in the subtle body. And through this, there is an experience of bliss and warmth that is generated and which permeates the whole mind-body complex of the individual. As one refines this technique and becomes more specialized, or more masters the technique more thoroughly, one becomes able to focus upon the various chakras in the subtle body and to, for example, draw the energy from the crown of the head down to the throat. And when this is successfully performed, there is an authentic experience of joy, which is simply termed joy, technically. When the energy is further brought down to the heart chakra, there is the experience of sublime joy. When the energy is drawn down to the navel chakra, there is the experience of what is known technically as special joy, or an even more intense joy. And then when the energy is drawn down to and contained within, not lost, but contained within the genital chakra, there is the experience of what is known as co-emergent joy. And in order to successfully practice karma mudra, a person must first attain the yogic mastery of this technique so that the energy can be brought down to and held in the genital chakra without being lost in the ordinary process of orgasm. And then the person is able to cultivate a non-dual, non-conceptual state of awareness. And then further, there is a process whereby that energy is raised again from the genital chakra to the navel chakra, from the navel chakra to the heart chakra, from the heart chakra to the throat chakra, and from the throat chakra to the crown of the head. And so the process is reversed. And the preparation for karma mudra practice, for this so-called sexual yoga or sexual technique, involves mastery over the ability to consciously lower and consciously raise the energy without losing it in the ordinary process of sexual orgasm. And then, once the energy has been raised, it is consciously directed throughout all of the various subtle channels of the body, which the Buddhist system numbers as 72,000 subtle channels for the nadis, or subtle channels for the passage of energy throughout the body. And with the realization of and mastery of that technique, from the Buddhist point of view, one arrives at the more ultimate purpose of the whole thing, which is not any particular sexual orientation at all, but which is the realization of Mahamudra, not simply the cultivation of that particular experience. And so it involves a very conscious, very committed process over a long period of time using fairly specific or highly specific techniques in order for a person to truly realize the meaning or truly realize the value of these sexual practices. as the translator, I just must say that's perhaps the most complete description of the process that Rinpoche has ever given in public. There are historical examples of individuals who have attained enlightenment based upon these practices. One of the most famous in the Buddhist tradition is an Indian king whose name was Indrabhuti, and it is traditionally said that he relied upon 500 of his queens every day and 500 of his queens every night for 6 years. And through this process attained enlightenment because his practice was pure. In Tibet we have examples of lay figures such as Marpa the translator, who was married. In fact, he had a total of 8 wives, all of whom were his consorts in this kind of yogic practice. And he is accredited with having attained Buddhahood in a single lifetime, during that very lifetime, largely as a result of these kinds of yogic practice which he undertook. And so the paths exist. It's a question of whether the individual is capable of meeting the challenge of putting those techniques into use in the proper way. If a person simply thinks that sex is tantra per se, and simply engages in sexual intercourse or sexual activity thinking, oh, this is tantra, they're missing the point. And in fact, they may be doing themselves a great deal of harm. From the point of view of the Vajrayana practice, there are some of the most important, the most crucial guidelines for tantric practice are what are known as the 14 root downfalls. They're couched in a negative sense, in the sense that to commit these or to indulge in these is a downfall or constitutes an obstruction, an impediment in tantric practice. And the fifth of these involves the misunderstanding of sex and the indulgence in sex, especially the experience of the ordinary experience of orgasm, which constitutes a great loss of energy, which from the point of view of Tantra could be harnessed and cultivated in a far more profitable way for the enlightenment of the individual. And so from the point of view of formal tantric practice, the ordinary experience of sex, particularly the experience of orgasm, constitutes an impediment to the path rather than an enhancement of it. And so for someone to misunderstand the point and say, Tantra is all about sex, therefore sex equals Tantra, is missing the point. It really is a question of whether the individual is capable of that integrity of practice in order to bring those forces to bring them to bear and to channel them into